We're live. Can everybody see me and hear me? And oh, great, the chat widget on screen is not working. Awesome. This is not the stream for the on screen chat widget to decide it not worked. To decide to not work, but whatever. I guess I can't do anything about it. Okay, can people see me and hear me? All right. So, we have a lot to talk about. No, I'm not going to reboot the stream. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. It's just annoying. So, anyway, today was quite a day. Today was a very, very important day in the history of the Seahawks organization. One of the most important days ever in the history of the Seattle Seahawks organization. And we got to talk about it. So, I'm going to stream until like 8:30 here probably. I'm not going to go super long. I usually don't do super long streams on here anymore. But we're going to do what we can do. And we're going to say what needs to be said. So, Pete Carroll is out. Pete Carroll has been fired. And I know technically he didn't get fired, but the dude got fired. The dude got fired, and they put it in flowery language so it didn't seem so bad. But the dude got let go, period. And I know that there are some mixed emotions. And I know that there are some people who are hurting right now. I know there are some people who are unhappy right now. But I want to be very clear about this. You know, Pete Carroll is a good guy. He's done a lot of great things for this team. He's had a lot of success here. He is the most successful head coach in the history of the Seahawks. And in terms of accomplishment and achievement, he is the best coach the Seahawks have ever had, for sure. But there is no doubt in my mind that this was the correct move to make. There is no doubt in my mind that this was the time to do something different, and that I'm not happy that he's gone, but I'm happy that we're going to have somebody else. So we can now move on. We can now try to find somebody new, somebody different, and I'm excited to see what happens. I am. I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm excited to see what this team decides to do post Pete Carroll. I think that pretty much whatever they do is going to be better than what we had. Not in totality, of course, but in terms of what we were getting right now versus what we could get with any other random hire. I do think we will be headed in the right direction. Now, that doesn't mean that I just want anybody. I want the right guy. I want somebody who is actually going to do a great job, not just an okay job or even a good job. I'm looking for the guy who can do a great job. However, I feel like some people are unaware of this fact, the way I get comments, the way people say things in my streams and my videos. So let me explain something to everybody out there just to try to get us started in the right direction. If the Seattle Seahawks hire a coach and that head coach comes in and does badly, you know what you do? You fire that coach and you go get another coach. You can do it after like 2 or 3 years. It happens all the time. So I am not afraid of the next coach failing. I am not. Because I know that even if he does fail, okay, let's go get somebody else. And then we keep doing it, and we keep doing it, and keep doing it until we find the actual right guy. And eventually you will. Ask yourself this. Random example. In 2010, the Dallas Cowboys fired Wade Phillips. They fired Wade Phillips. And then they proceeded to have 9.5 mediocre years with Jason Garrett, who was a bad coach, did not get the team to any upper level success before finally moving on. So Jason Garrett failed. But were the Cowboys wrong to fire Wade Phillips? No. Absolutely not. They were absolutely right to fire Wade Phillips. They just happened to get the wrong guy next. That doesn't change the fact they did the right thing. When the Giants moved on from Tom Coughlin because he had gone senile, they proceeded to hire 3 terrible coaches in a row. Does that mean they were wrong to fire Tom Coughlin, who was going senile? No. They just needed to keep going through coaches until they found the right one, which they did, finally, these last couple years with Daboll, or Daboll, whatever. So, I am not afraid of failing. I am not afraid of hiring a coach who's terrible, because unlike Carroll, who was deeply embedded into this organization for what he had done in the past, the new head coach you bring in is not going to have that. He might be gone in 2 years regardless if the ownership changes. So, I'm not afraid of failing. I'm not afraid of making a bad hire. That happens. That's the cost of taking chances. All right? There are 2 decisions that need to be made here. The first decision is firing or keeping Carroll. And that decision that we have made today is absolutely the right one. And then there's a second decision that needs to be made. Who are we going to hire to replace him? That decision could end up being good or bad, but that doesn't mean the initial decision was bad. All right, so let's go ahead and open it up a little bit here. I know there are going to be a lot of questions, a lot of things that people want to converse about with these Seahawks. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to stream for maybe an hour, maybe more. I'm going to be reading through chat comments, responding to questions, responding to comments, etc., etc. As many as I can. There are, however, already over 200 people in here, so I probably won't get to every comment. So, if you have a comment that you really want me to see and read and respond to, then you need to send it in. You can send it in as a super chat, a tip, one of those 2 things, a member message, one of those 2 things, or 3 things rather. I will definitely see it and definitely reply to it. Like, for instance, we have already one member message from It's Hoof. Thank you for the member message. Viva la Pete Carroll. I can get behind that sentiment a little bit. No problem with it. And, let's see here. If you are new to the channel, please sub. We are about 110 subs away from our January goal already. We are at about 110. We need to get to 15,600 by the end of the month. We are about 110 subs away. You can become a channel member for $2, $5, or $15 a month. As you can see, we have a donation tracker over on the right side, as well as a sub tracker and a member tracker. I have a Patreon you can pledge to. Those are all the best ways to support. The easiest way is actually to just click the like button. We are at 39 likes right now with almost 200 people in here. Okay. So, all that being said, let's dive in here. Thoughts on Brian Callahan? He might bring his dad, Bill Callahan, over as the O-line coach. I don't know very much about Brian Callahan. I know Bill Callahan. Bill Callahan's great. I don't really want him as a head coach, but he's a great offensive guy, offensive line guy especially. But I don't know much about his son. That might be a little too risky of a move, to be perfectly honest. Hey, Vizons, thank you for the $1.99. Who is your top choice for the HC vacancy and why? All right. My top choice for the head coach vacancy. I am going to go with, I would say, Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson's my favorite. He's not going to want GM power, which is great because we can't give it to him. He's done great work with Jared Goff, which means that he could probably do something very similar with Geno Smith because Jared Goff and Geno Smith have a ton in common. I don't think he would try to blow up our roster. I think he would try to work within the roster we have for the most part. and he's young. And if it works, you have your head coach for the next 30 years, which is a dream. Every owner dreams of having an owner that um every owner dreams of having a coach that can stay in place for several decades. So Ben Johnson's my number one. He's kind of perfect for what we're trying to do here, I feel like. I want an offensive coach because I like to switch back and forth from offense to defense to offense to defense when you're going from one coach to another coach. But I also feel like, honestly, we're entering an era where offensive coaches have more success. All right. Operation Mass 3, thank you for the $1.99. What do you think we do with bad contracts like Adams? I think a lot of those guys are just out. A no-brainer now. Adams out, Diggs out. Whoever we bring in as the next coach, they're probably not going to want to do that. They're probably not going to want to mess around with all that money being paid for safeties that are arguably not even that good. So my best guess is that the bad contracts go. You might see a guy like Dre'Mont Jones go as well. You might see a guy like even a Jaron Reed, who we like, who is a good player and not that expensive, go. So I think the bad contracts are going to be an easy out now. Pretentious Cameron, thank you for the 24-month member message. Are we the top destination for a head coach? No. No. I think the top destination for a head coach is, let me take a look here at the openings. I think the top destination for a head coach is either the Chargers or the Falcons. Chargers or Falcons. Devin Tuggle, thank you for the $1.99. How do you feel about Mike McDonald? I'd be open to it. He's done great work in Baltimore. The issue with McDonald is that he's a defensive guy, and I think offensive guys are the way of the future, but that doesn't have to be some hard set rule. That could just be recency bias. Chargers, are you not familiar with Spanos? Spanos is probably going to sell the team at some point, Natty. I'm not really thinking about Spanos that much because I don't think he's going to be around that much longer. And it's LA. Come on, guys. It's LA. But yeah, Mike McDonald would be good. I would be open to it. I'm not against it. Tony Freshke, thank you for the $2. What do we do with draft picks? Depends on who we hire. But at the end of the day, I think that Schneider and the new head coach are going to work together on a plan, and they're going to decide what they want. But hopefully we stick to a BPA strategy. Hopefully we don't let the new coach come in and say, look, I want a quarterback no matter what. I don't care if our pick comes up and the best quarterback on the board is Spencer Rattler, you take Spencer Rattler. That's not going to fly. That's not going to be okay. You take the quarterback if the quarterback is there to take. You take the offensive lineman if the offensive lineman is there to take. You take the defensive lineman if the defensive lineman is there to take. You do things intelligently. You do things properly. So I think we will probably stick to that. And I'm good with that. Water Napple, thank you for the $4.99. How much would you be willing to spend on Williams? And random other question, do you think there's any scenario where we trade up in the draft? Well, I'd be willing to give Leonard Williams somewhere around $17 million a year. However, if the new coach comes in and just views Leonard Williams as a sunk cost and doesn't want to spend that much money on an aging defensive lineman, then you got to at least be open to it, right? You got to at least be open to it. So, I think that Leonard Williams is worthy of staying around here because he is so good. But at the same time, I'm also very aware of the fact that Leonard Williams might just be a sunk cost of the previous administration. It will be interesting to see Schneider's mindset. Is this a full rebuild, cutting vets like Geno, etc., or will they try to retool with Geno? have a theory that because the time window is so small here, they're going to try to keep as much of the roster together as they can, but there is going to be some stuff thrown out. Like, I think Gino will stay, but I'm not sure. I think Lockett will stay, but I'm not sure. I do think you're going to see like Adams and Diggs and Ballore go because those are guys who were firmly rooted in the old organization. Maybe a guy like Dre'Mont Jones as well. But I have a feeling they're going to try to win with Gino for at least a year because they know they don't have that much time. Pierce, thank you for the $1.99. More primetime games with a new head coach. Maybe. I don't think so. I don't think that's a big factor. I think they just evaluate that based on how good they think each team will be. And I think that the Seahawks have not gotten a lot of primetime games because people haven't thought they were going to be very good. Can we all agree, Prentice Cameron, can we all agree that Dan Quinn would be bad? Dan Quinn would not be bad. He would just be uninteresting, boring. He would be a safe pick. It would be like the Cowboys hiring Mike McCarthy. It could work. It could be okay. I'm not against it. I don't hate it. But we can do better. It is possible that the Seahawks position, the head coaching job, is not desirable. It's possible. It's possible that people are going to look at our head coaching job and say, hey, you've got to deal with the old GM because Schneider stayed. You got to deal with new ownership in a couple years, probably. That makes the job less desirable. We don't have a young franchise quarterback like the Chargers. So that makes it a little less desirable. There are some good things about the job. We do have a good quarterback. We do have a lot of good young talent. There's a lot of promise on this roster. We have very wealthy owners, and we're probably going to be bought by wealthy owners again. But this is not necessarily a situation where this is not necessarily a scenario where people are going to be falling all over themselves to get this head coaching job. I think you could make an argument that like the New England job would be more desirable right now. Corbin Smith brought up two guys I really like in Brian Flores and Steve Wilks. Didn't Steve Wilks go one and done in Arizona? That's the guy, right? I never got the impression he was good. He wasn't even good this year for the Niners, really. They coasted on their talent defensively. And Brian Flores, I mean, there's some things I like about Flores, but I don't want him as a head coach. He's got to be a defensive coordinator. I don't think he's got head coach material. Matty F. Brown is pissed. I know. Look, I know that there are some big Pete Carroll stands out there. I understand that, but I can't see it. I can't see it. I try to see things their way, and all I get from what they say is lower your standards. And that's never going to happen. Steve Wilks had Josh Rosen as his QB. That is true. But I don't think he's done a very good job as the defensive coordinator in San Fran this year. So I don't think he should get promoted. Brian Callahan is the offensive coordinator for the Bengals, and he played a good part when it comes to the Bengals offense and had success with Browning. He isn't the play caller. Feels like we can do better, right? Like, feels like you can do a little better than that. Are you a Bobby Slowick fan if we turned that way? Wasn't Slowick bad with San Fran and then he had one good year in Houston? He did make that Panthers team in 2022 pretty tough as an interim coach. Yeah, that's true, Ghost. That's true, Ghost. I'm not opposed to that necessarily, but I feel like we can do better. I do firmly believe that with the exception of like the meme hires, pretty much anything's better than what we had. Because here's the thing. Pete Carroll was firmly embedded into this organization. He was firmly embedded into this organization in a way that made it really hard to get him out. So even when he was failing and underachieving, we felt like we were stuck with him. We hire a bad coach, we're not going to be stuck with him. We can just fire him. Okay, I see a lot of people talking about Harbaugh. Guys, we're not getting Harbaugh. Like, I'll talk about him a little bit as the year goes on. We're not getting Harbaugh. Harbaugh's going to want to be the GM, and we don't have GM power to give him. Like think about it for a second here. Jim Harbaugh is coming off a national championship. He was a tremendously successful head coach for the 49ers before leaving the NFL. He's going to want general manager power, and we cannot give it to him because of Schneider. Alphabet is bad. Thank you for the sub. Welcome to the channel. Operation Mass 3, thank you for the 4.99. Do you think we cut all aging players and big contracts all at once and have a rough year with little cap space, or still try and compete next year? I think we try to compete because John Schneider is probably thinking I only have a couple years to audition before the new owners come in, and I need to impress them. And also, Schneider put together a decent chunk of this roster. Think about it. Schneider played a part in these recent draft classes. He played a part in some of the signings. So he's probably looking at this team and thinking, I like this team. I like this roster. I like these players. I don't want to just move off of them just because. So whoever comes in as the new head coach, Schneider's probably going to have some give and take with them where he says, look, I know you're going to want some of your stuff. I know you're going to want some of your own players, but you're not going to get to blow this whole thing up. So I don't think we're going to blow it up and just have a bad year. I think we're going to try to win, and that is totally doable. We won 9 games this year with a bad head coach. We won 9 games this year with that god awful defense that can only get better. So why not? 283, thank you for the $1.99. Elijah Evero, he's good. He was really good in Denver, right? Wasn't he in Carolina this year? Obviously, things didn't go well there, but it's hard for me to blame him for any of that. So, yeah, Evero, maybe. I'm not totally against it. But again, I want offensive guys before defensive guys. It's Jose. Thank you for the $1.99. I see a lot of people saying Mike Vrabel. Thoughts? Vrabel would be all right. I think he'd be good. I think he'd be solid. He would be another kind of Dan Quinn type hire where he's good, but he's safe. It's not a home run swing. It's just trying to put the ball in play. I think we can do better than Vrabel. I think there's a lot of Pete Carroll in Vrabel, but I wouldn't hate it. I just kind of feel like I'd prefer to go a little bit more bold. And I understand that maybe we can't because of the ownership situation. What do you think about Gino's future here? I want him to stay, but new coaches might not. I think it's very, very up in the air. It depends on what the new coach wants. I'll say this. If you hire the new head coach and the new head coach says, I don't want Gino, you got to go with it. It makes no sense to hire a coach and then say, sorry, you don't get to have the quarterback you want. That doesn't make any sense. So if the new head coach comes in and is like, I don't want Gino as my quarterback, then you got to roll with it. Sorry. So those are my thoughts there. Kronos, interesting Bears have called about interviewing Shane Waldron. I mean, they're going to interview a lot of people. And look, if we hire somebody like a Ben Johnson or a Dave Canales or a Bobby Slowick or any real offensive head coach, Waldron's gone regardless, right? Because the new head coach, if he's an offensive guy, is going to run his own offense and probably want his own offensive coordinator hire. He's not going to want to bring in something from the previous regime. That doesn't make any sense. So Waldron is gone unless we hire somebody like Dan Quinn, and Dan Quinn is just like, okay, Waldron, you can stay. I like you. That could happen. Maddie said if we don't win 11 games and win a playoff game, it's a but. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That really makes a lot of sense given the fact that we hadn't accomplished that with Carroll in 4 years, and he was apparently totally okay with that. I'm sorry, but that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I have no idea why Matty F would say something like that when he's the same guy trying to convince people that all these 9-win seasons and getting blown out in the playoffs are actually good. Like, I don't know where the hell he gets off saying something like that. Operation Mass 3, thank you for the $1.99. Do you think John had a hand in removing Pete? I don't think he has that power. I don't think so. I think this was purely Jody and Bert. Jody and Bert made this decision, and Jody and Bert own it one way or the other. I don't think Schneider had much to do with it. Will Clint Hurt ever get another defensive job again? I don't think so, man. He's not good. Like, the only way he would have kept a job this year would be if he kept the job he already had. What is the ownership situation? Y'all keep saying Jody Allen's selling the team. Did she say she was selling the team? She has to, but she doesn't have to do it right now. She can do it whenever she wants to, but it was in Paul Allen's will that she has to sell it. And it will happen eventually. We just don't know exactly when. Grim Nem, thank you for the $1.99. What offensive and defensive coordinator do you want? My philosophy on that is you hire the head coach and then you give him whatever he wants in terms of offensive and defensive coordinator. You let him make the call. Whatever he wants in that capacity, you give him. So I'm not even going to play that game until we get the head coach. When we get the head coach, then I'll pass judgment on that. Like, I'll say this. If we bring in Dan Quinn to be our head coach, then I would want to keep Waldron because I think he's building something good here, and I'd rather roll with it than blow it up when I'm bringing in a guy like Dan Quinn who's a defensive mind anyway. That's my position. But if you bring in somebody like Eric Bieniemy or Ben Johnson, then it's more of, well, the offense is going to change anyway. Derpy Squid, thank you for the $2. Thoughts on Mike McDonald, Ravens DC for head coach? I'd be interested. Not my favorite, but he's done a great job in Baltimore. I would be okay with Mike McDonald. A lot of potential there. He's done some great things. And I don't think he has tremendous talent in Baltimore. He doesn't have a superstar edge rusher. And look at what he's been able to pull off here. So I'd say, yeah. I could go with that. 1 second, guys. I want to make sure I didn't miss any comments. I think we're good. Lester, it's not a competition. Since when is there so many Pete fans everyone is saying we're screwed? Guys, I'm sure there were people who still loved Jason Garrett when the Cowboys let him go, but the Cowboys were right to let him go. There's always going to be some people who will defend things that are difficult to defend. Hey, Jose, how you doing? Or Jorge, excuse me, how you doing? Wait, Hurt got fired? No, but Hurt's not coming back. What about Dave Canales? I'd like to see him do a little bit more, but I'd be intrigued. Um, I'd like to see him do a little bit more than have one good year as an offensive coordinator, but he's been impressive and he's done great work with quarterbacks. He's somebody who would be totally fine, I think, working with Gino because Gino's has had so much success with him previously. So, okay. I won't hate it, but I will be like, man, we're talking about one good year here. Water Napple, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. If you could list your top three candidates right now, who would they be? Number one, Ben Johnson. Number two. Hold on 1 second here. Let me make sure I don't miss anything obvious before I open my mouth here. I'll say second place. How about Alex Van Pelt? Alex Van Pelt and then Mike McDonald. I'm going to go with that. Do we keep Bobby and Tyler? I'm going to say Bobby, probably not. And Tyler, I think we're kind of stuck to financially. But it's possible we just decide to eat it. We're already going to be eating some serious dead money on Jamal Adams and Diggs, I think. So I don't think we're going to be interested in eating a bunch of dead money on Lockett as well when Lockett still has something left in the tank. He's not a bad player. He's just limited in what he can do. Why do you guys want Ben Johnson? Just because you're a good play caller doesn't mean you're going to be a good head coach. Well, Pedro, it's Schrodinger's box. You have to open the box to find out, right? You can't just say that and then say that's a reason not to hire somebody. That's a reason to be wary of somebody. Do you think we draft safety? We probably have to if we cut Adams and Diggs. If we bring in Quinn, I'm 100% sure he could utilize Jamal correctly, but I think Jamal's body is broken down. He could have utilized old Jamal. This Jamal, I don't think so. His body's busted. I think Jamal Adams would have been great here if his body didn't break down, but it did. Michael, I'm not interested in any college coach. I don't think we need to go to college. There are so many good guys in the pros. Do we trade for one pick? We probably can't. I mean, look, if you hire somebody like Jim Harbaugh and he's like, I want Caleb Williams, then you got to give him what he wants, but that's not going to happen. So realistically, I think if somebody comes in and is like, look, I want Caleb Williams, you just tell them, sorry, no, and then you go do something else with your time. Just go interview somewhere else. Go to the Bears. Then you can get Caleb no matter what. Upo, thank you for the $10. Prediction on how this happened. At the annual postseason meeting, Schneider wanted to purge the culture out of the organization. Pete just wanted to run it back with the same guys like Adams. That's very believable. I don't know how you guys felt about the cigar stuff, but there were some people who were furious about it, and John might have been one of them, and Pete was not one of them. So maybe that was like some kind of a breaking point. Maybe that was something that indicated that Carroll just didn't have it anymore. My issue with that theory, Upo, is that it implies Schneider had power to fire Carroll, and I don't think he does. I think maybe he could have gone to Jody with that and said, hey, I want to do this now because of what I heard from Carroll earlier today. I'm not so sure that Pete would be able to get pushed out by Schneider like that because they had a disagreement on how to handle a situation. Mitchell, I know that's the story. I don't believe it. I think that's bull. That doesn't make any sense, Mitchell. That's the lie that they told to try to justify what they did. Pretentious Cameron, thank you for the $5. I think we should take Jamal Adams' cap hit all at once rather than splitting it up after June 1st. What do you think? I'd be good with that. I would do that. I'm okay with that. I know it'd be tough, but I'd rather just get it over with. I just want to stop thinking about him. I don't want him on my team anymore. So I actually agree. But either way is fine by me as long as he's not here next year. Any possibility of trading Pete Carroll for some draft picks? I don't think so. Maybe a team like the Chargers would be like, we need his culture. I don't know. The cigars thing wasn't the final straw. The Steelers game was. I mean, maybe. I feel like that cigar thing was a thing. I feel like the cigar thing mattered. And that did bug me the more I thought about it as time went by. I would be so mad if we promoted in house. There's nobody in house we can even consider promoting. Waldron's been a overall, in terms of result, mediocre to slightly above mediocre offensive coordinator in Seattle. There's no way he deserves to be a head coach right now. There's no way that's something that's going to happen. Ian says John has been looking for replacements for a month or so. Wow. So the 4-game losing streak did it. The 4-game losing streak did it then. Where do you think Seahawks will stand on DK with a new coach? I hope we keep him. Afraid new coach won't tolerate it. There's nothing to tolerate. What DK does is so insignificant compared to pretty much any other superstar receiver in the league. There's nothing to deal with DK. He doesn't do anything bad. It's occasionally he gets a little bit animated. It's really not that big of a deal. Carroll no longer said vaguely that he was competing for his guys. I competed pretty hard to be the coach, he admitted before eventually went along with their decisions. Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking to read too hard into the things he said in that press conference today when he was probably very emotional and very upset. Yeah, I never really got the DK hate. Yeah, it's like there's nothing to deal with. He's a little bit demonstrative. It's not that big of a deal. We should get Dan Quinn head coach, and we need to get Vrabel as OC. That's an interesting one, Filter. Mike Vrabel as an OC would be a spirited choice. Do you think Jody Allen and the franchise will be incentivized to choose the right coach by tying the selling of the team to the coach's contract length? Um, for all we know, Jody's not planning on selling the team for another 4 or 5 years, which would make this a lot easier, as long as she can convince people of that. But if you're a head coach coming into Seattle right now, your plan is probably I need to do something awesome the first couple of years so that way I can't get fired by the new regime because I'm so good. You think we should draft for best available given we won't have that many holes and the defense can't get much worse, or draft positions of need? Always BPA. Always BPA. Positions of need got us in trouble in the first place. No more. Jared Stahl, thank you for the $1.99 super chat. Thoughts on Vrabel? He'd be okay. I feel like we can do better. Like, Vrabel was good in Tennessee, but he wasn't exactly great. And there's a lot of Pete Carroll in Vrabel to me. He's like younger Pete. And if we're going to go that route of younger Pete, I think I would prefer Dan Quinn personally. But I think we can do better than both. What about Shane Waldron as head coach? He hasn't done enough dirty deeds. You got to do better than that, man. I liked Waldron's work overall. I thought Waldron did a decent job, but it's not head coaching material at all. You get Vrabel to run offense and you have Dan to run defense. I think that with Walker. Okay. Okay, that's enough internet for today. Dan Quinn as OC, Frank Reich as DC, Hurt as. Oh, okay. Next question. Clint Hurt as head coach. Okay. What about Belichick as defensive? He's not going to agree to that. Come on, guys. Belichick wants to be a head coach slash general manager. Do you think Jeff Bezos will buy the team? I think that's a very realistic possibility. I think that's the most likely possibility. Penix to Seattle, I don't see it. He's going to be gone by the time we pick, and we don't trade up in the first. That's one of Schneider's like really hard rules here. He doesn't believe in trading up in the first. Would you rather have Carroll or Waldron as head coach? Waldron because he'd be easy to fire if he doesn't work out. What do you think of Braylon Trice? I talked about him in a video earlier today. You trade down a little bit and get Braylon Trice. I'm happy with that. Sometimes not always BPA if you're missing, say, one, two pieces on a side of the ball. That's how we got into trouble in the mid tens. We kept drafting for need and we kept drafting crappers. I'm done with that. BPA unless you literally have no choice. Like if BPA is a wide receiver in the first round, we can't really do that. Okay, that's different. Half the O line is probably going to be gone. Well, as long as it's the lesser half, I got no problem with that. Call in show. I'm probably going to do a call in show in the next few days, ICD. Got to do it. What are your thoughts on what Ben Johnson would want at QB? Well, based on what he did with Jared Goff, I think he would do great with Geno Smith. That's one thing about Ben Johnson that I kind of like. I don't think he would come in and be like, I don't want Geno Smith. He would probably be like, I can do with Geno what I did with Goff. I can turn him into a really good, great quarterback. And in the meantime, you draft a quarterback at some point in the next couple years to take over when the time comes. But to me, Ben Johnson is a guy who would jump at the opportunity to coach Geno Smith. So that allows us to move forward quickly rather than lingering around at the back for 2 years while waiting for a roster to build because we ripped everything down, which I don't think we need to do. How long will it take for us to make the new head coach hire? Hopefully, a long time so we know we're making the right decision. Do we even draft quarterback if we keep Geno and Locke? Well, no, but I don't think we're going to keep Locke. He's a free agent, and he's probably going to want like $6 or $7 million. We just don't need to do that. Thoughts on Evan Brown? Got to do better than Evan Brown, Filter. Got to do better. Not good enough. What are your expectations for this team, assuming we get a favorable hire like Ben Johnson in terms of record? I think we could win like 11 games. I think we could get to about 11 wins as long as we hire the right guy. Do the call and show on the weekend. That's probably what we're going to do, yeah. There's talks about us trading up to get Daniels, Nix, or Penix. I don't think Schneider believes in trading up in the first round. And I also don't think he's going to be taking a developmental guy at quarterback when we're trying to win now. I just don't see it. Jim Schwartz's will be a name out there. No, can we not? Jim Schwartz, Jim Shorts. Eric Bieniemy I would go after. That's an interesting name too. Not totally against it. Locke was worth the 4 million this year. I know, but he's going to want more money because of the Eagles game. And we don't have the money to spend on a backup quarterback right now like that, I don't think. What are your thoughts on potentially making a trade for Justin Fields? I don't like Justin Fields. I think he sucks at football. I think Justin Fields is bad at football. Do not want him. With Carroll out and Russell available, do you see a scenario in which Wilson returns to the Seahawks? No, because Schneider was the guy who hated Wilson. Pete Carroll, if anything, was the guy trying to keep Wilson in by the end. Remember? Carroll is the guy who fought to keep Wilson. Schneider's the guy who fought to get him out. What if the new coach wants. No coach is going to want Russell Wilson. Guys, there is no coach out there, especially one that we would hire, who would want Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is a signing that you make when you're desperate and you need a quick fix and you're just throwing up a Hail Mary because you know you're about to get fired anyway. That's something like Arthur Smith would have done. That's something maybe Mike Tomlin would do. It's not something a brand new hire is going to do. Thoughts on Penix learning behind Gino? I just don't really do the Penix thing that much. I love him, but I don't know about him in the pros, man. I don't know about Gino in the pros. I don't know about Penix in the pros. Excuse me. I don't know if it's gonna work the way that it worked at UW. I just don't. Nix over Penix. I don't like Nix either. I like Penix more than Nix. And I'm just not a believer in either of them to the point where I want to be spending really high draft capital on them. Cam Ward in the third would be my guy. I like Cam Ward in the third. I'd be intrigued by that. Thoughts on trading for, man, Filter, you're just killing it tonight, man. Yes, we're totally going to trade for one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league who just signed a mega extension with the Chargers last year. Yeah, that's going to happen. Yeah, while we're at it, why don't we talk about trading for Patrick Mahomes? Why don't we talk about trading for Brock Purdy or Tua or like let's talk about more things that can't happen. Come on, guys. We're going to waste enough time tonight talking about stuff that won't happen. Let's not waste extra time talking about things that definitely can't happen. Life is short. Joe Milton or Jordan Travis? I love Joe Milton. You take him in the fifth round, you develop him, boom. Chad Hart, thank you for the member message. 12 months. Thank God Carroll is finally history, Brendan. You're going to have to get rid of that Pete Carroll emoji, Jim Harbaugh, or Mike Saban from Alabama. No Saban from Alabama. If we get Saban from Alabama, that's going to be gross for so many reasons. Not the least of which is that he'll be bad in the NFL. Is Bo Nix overrated? I'm not a fan of Bo Nix at all. I'm not a fan. Yeah, guys, seriously, think about it. So, a year ago, Russell Wilson got his head coach fired because he played so badly. The year before that, he tried to get his head coach fired. Why would any coach want to take that on? Everywhere he goes, head coaches either get fired or try to get fired. Offensive coordinators get fired or try to get fired. Like, think about it. Why would any head coach want to deal with that unless they absolutely have to? Joe Milton and Ben Johnson, Joe learns under Gino for a little. I'd love that, Kevin. Sign me up for that. It's starting to sound like JJ McCarthy is going to be a first round pick. There's no way I'm taking him in the first round. To me, he's a third round guy. I like him there, but there are too many questions there. He was way too protected at Michigan. Way too easy for him to win games. Shane Waldron has an interview with the Bears. If he gets hired, we get a pick, right? No, he's white. We'd get a pick if Clint Hurt gets hired, but who the hell's going to hire Clint Hurt? Like, he was way too protected at Michigan by that running game and offensive line and even receivers to a certain extent. He's kind of small. He does have a nice arm. He does use his mobility pretty well. I do like him, but I don't first round like him. Eric B as HC sounds good. I'd be intrigued by that. No, Jake Waldman, I'm being literal. The draft pick thing is for minority coaches. I'm not capping. This is literally a thing in the NFL. Minority coaches get compensatory picks. White coaches do not. Who do you want to be Seahawks quarterback to be? I mean, I'm fine with rocking for Gino for another year or so. I think JJ's going back to college. Why? His stock is at an all-time high. He's never going to have higher stock than he is right now. Imagine if Jim Harbaugh becomes head coach and brings JJ McCarthy. Yeah, I've already talked about this, Crotanic, but there's no way in the world JJ McCarthy, I'm sorry, Jim Harbaugh is going to come to Seattle. Like, Jim Harbaugh is going to want to be a GM. And we don't have GM power to give him. So it can't happen. Besides his size and arm talent, I don't see much in Joe Milton, honestly. Why do you love him? Because of the raw talent. He's got that incredible arm. He's got good size. He's got great mobility and agility. He's just raw. He's just not good yet, but he can become good. Could you see Russ and Pete reuniting with one another in Atlanta? No, I don't think Pete's going anywhere for this year. I think he's going to be in that advisory role in Seattle for at least 1 year. And I don't think Russ is going to go to Atlanta with the new head coach. Miles, thank you for the dollar. Thoughts on Kalen DeBoer to the Hawks? Very unlikely, but kind of cool to think about. I kind of don't want to do the college coach thing right now. I kind of want to take a swing with a guy who's been in the pros. I think we are kind of screwed cap space wise. We are not going to we can't trade off any big contracts, meaning we're going to eat a lot of dead money. So we should trade back, acquire more picks, and get younger and cheaper. I don't think it's going to be that bad, but I'm going to make some videos over the next few weeks talking about salary cap stuff. I don't think it's as bad as some people think, though. Defense or offense first round pick this draft or trade down? I want offensive linemen. Besides Joe Milton, who is your QB to draft and learn under Geno? Probably Cam Ward. I like Cam Ward. Do you think we draft a QB now that we fired Pete, and who would you want? I think it's more likely now. I still kind of feel like it's not going to break the way we need it to break to draft a quarterback, but I like Cam Ward in the third, and I like Joe Milton in like the fifth. Yeah, I heard McMillan opted for the draft, which surprised me because he had such a bad year because of the injury. If he came back next year, he'd probably have like 1,500 yards. What kind of players do you think we would trade down for, and where would we go down to pick them? Guys like Graham Barton will be there in the back end of the first. Maybe a guy like Cooper Bebe. Dylan DeRosier, thank you for the $1.99. Thoughts on Hunter Biden for head coach? Okay. Okay. Quinn Ewers is not entering the draft, Chris. Quinn Ewers is staying in Texas for another year. Honestly, I know John has never traded up, but he's also never had his full power. If he likes the guy, I think he will go for it. But we don't have a second round pick this year to do it with. A big part of the ammunition you use to trade up into the first is that second round pick. We don't have the second round pick. Who is your free agent priority number one? I guess it kind of has to be Leonard Williams. But I don't know. I'm not super married to any of it. Miles, thank you for the dollar tip. What round do you see Zach Zinter going in the draft? A shame he got injured. Was one of my favorite prospects. Probably like the 4th or 5th round now, which I'd still get him. I like him. Yeah, sign me up for that. Zach Zinter in the 4th or 5th round. Hell yeah. I might have taken him in the 2nd round before the injury. So I'll take a 2-round hit for that. Anthony Weaver, Ravens D-line coach for the next DC from Derpy Squid. Thank you for the $2. I mean, if McDonald comes over, he's going to bring people like that with him, right? Like, if McDonald comes over, then you are looking at a guy like Anthony Weaver coming with him. People in chat, if you guys can hear me and see me and everything's going okay, let me know in chat now. I'm getting some indications from my streaming software that there are some issues with the stream at the moment. Can you guys see me and hear me? Please tell me if you can. I'm having issues. Okay, it's not bad then. Okay, YouTube is bullshitting me then, which I don't appreciate that. Okay. YouTube is full of poop right now. Thank you. Dallas Turner, if he's there at 16, I'd trade up for him. I like Dallas Turner. I like Latu. I like Jared Verse. Those guys are good. Yeah, okay. So the stream's only going to go on for like another 5 minutes here. But, yeah, I just wanted to make sure we could get through these last 5 minutes. Thoughts on Daniels? He's great, but we're not going to be able to get him. He's going to be gone in the top 10. Imagine play action game with a somewhat developed Joe Milton bombing it to DK. That's what I'm talking about, man. That's the stuff that excites me. And maybe Joe Milton only has like a 30% chance of finding NFL success, but That 30% is going to be incredible, man. I like Shane Waldron. I didn't think problems were him, but it's safe to say we will have an entire new coaching staff. The only way Waldron comes back is if we hire somebody like Dan Quinn. And Dan Quinn's just like, okay, go ahead, keep the same offense. Who cares? I don't care. I'm worried about the defense. That could happen. But if we hire somebody like Ben Johnson, then no way. If you had to choose, would you rather do Vrabel or Quinn as our head coach? Probably Quinn. He has less CTE. Opinion on Spencer Rattler? I'm intrigued, but if some team really wants to spend like a second round pick on him, I'm walking away from that. I'm not spending a second round pick. What could you get for Geno? Probably not that much because he's on that bigger contract now, which is why I don't think you'd even really trade him. Thoughts on Dave Canales? I like him, but he's only done it for 1 year. That's my problem with Slowick as well. Like you are taking a little bit of a gamble here because Slowick was not good in San Francisco, right? Like Slowick did not really have success in San Fran. So I'm not so sure that's good. And Canales has only had 1 year of coordinator success. Like, honestly, Waldron is about as qualified as Canales, isn't he? Because Waldron was good last year in 2022. So he and Canales both have the same number of good years as an offensive coordinator. Does this firing indicate that the sale of the team isn't as imminent as we had initially believed? I don't think so. Maybe it kind of points in that direction a little bit. Thoughts on JJ McCarthy? I like him, but I like him in the third. I don't like him in the first, and you're probably going to have to take him in the first. Do you think Aaron Glenn gets a look? He's done some nice things in Detroit. I think we can do better, but he's intriguing. Mike Tomlin got the Steelers job even though he had 1 year as a defensive coordinator for the Vikings. Yeah, and it was a gamble. Like it happens. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I am saying I'd like somebody with a little bit more of a track record. Like at least Ben Johnson has a couple years. I'm not sure about Dan Quinn as coach. I'm not either, but again, here's my thing. If you hire Dan Quinn and he's not good after a couple years, it's really easy to just push him out and go get somebody else. At least he's not embedded in the organization the way Carroll was. Anything against Jordan Travis besides the injury? Um, he is small. He is somebody who's going to make a lot of plays off schedule, which is kind of frustrating because that really limits the offensive coordinator talent that is willing to work with him, kind of like what we saw with Russell Wilson. But I do like him overall. You could ride him for a while at least. What range do you see Talise Fuaga getting drafted? He's probably like a first rounder, late to mid first rounder. Really impressive and fun guy. I like him a lot. Thanks for everything, Pete, but it's time for a new voice. Yeah. What are your thoughts on Lucas and his lingering knee issues? I'm concerned. I'm definitely concerned, but there's only so much you can do about it right now. Would we draft a tight end? We kind of need to, Owen. We definitely need to draft a tight end. I just don't know when we'll be able to. And I don't know who it's going to be. It's not a super top heavy tight end class. If we got Ben Johnson, who would you want our OC to be? Whoever Ben Johnson wants. At that point, I don't really care. It's totally up to Ben Johnson. He can do what he wants. I'm not going to force something on him. All right, guys. I think that's going to do it. We went for an hour. I think I said everything I need to say right now. I think that you guys have said everything that needs to be said. We're just kind of rehashing the same points now. So I'm going to be making a ton of videos over the next couple of weeks about coaching stuff, a new head coach, who it could be, what they might look like, etc., etc., etc. So if that is something that is interesting to you, if you want to see a lot of stuff about potential head coaches and what they would do in Seattle, then hit the sub button and get ready to see a lot of stuff come up over the next couple weeks. Starting basically tomorrow, we're jumping right in. Maybe tomorrow I kind of do use for research, and then Friday it starts. But either way, we're going to be throwing it in, and this is going to occupy the first several weeks of the off season. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming out. I'm going to go and get out of here. Great stream. Thank you for coming by. Thank you for all your support. Thank you to everybody who donated. Thank you to everybody who liked. Thank you to everybody who watched in any capacity. See you guys later on. More videos tomorrow. Go